As we reminded you earlier in this video, this channel is dedicated to uncovering UN Agenda 21 and its associated policies and programs. And there are two other agendas directly linked to the Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals that could benefit from the perhaps unnecessary level of panic we've seen maintained by the World Health Organization and some of their associates, and the media and experts who receive their funding. The first is a World Health Organization agenda in support of Sustainable Development Goal 3.8 and 3b, and it is called IA 2030. Immunization Agenda 2030, a global strategy to leave no one behind. IA 2030 envisions a world where everyone, everywhere, at every age, fully benefits from vaccines to improve health and well-being. As mentioned earlier, the Global Vaccine Action Plan is coming to an end soon, and as a result, during 2019, the World Health Organization convened a technical consultation process to produce their post-2020 vaccines and immunization vision and strategy. The result was Immunization Agenda 2030, a global strategy to leave no one behind. One of the IA 2030 project management partners is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Obviously. How do I vaccinate myself against Bill Gates?
What's wrong with this thing? It's f***ing Windows 98! Get Bill Gates in here! You told us Windows 98 would be faster and more efficient with better access to the internet!
It is faster, over 5 million...
The second Agenda 2030 program being promoted with OV3RT-19 is a technology program in support of Sustainable Development Goal 16.9 called ID 2020. Some of our followers may have heard of this one before. Sustainable Development Goal 16.9 aims by 2030 to provide legal identity for all, including birth registration. According to the United Nations High Commission on Refugees, a digital identity can facilitate access to essential services, aid countries in distribution of social benefits, and open up formal financial tools to the world's 2 billion unbanked people, also known as people who under the current system wouldn't pay carbon tax. The central thing really to remember about this digital identity promoted by the UN and the ID 2020 project is that this digital ID will provide you with access to essential services. It is worth taking note of the requirements ID 2020 have identified for a digital ID, referred to as the 4 Ps: private, portable, persistent, meaning it lives with you from birth to death, and personal, unique to you and only you. The technology to make such a digital ID really personal have existed for a number of years, and we have recently released an article on our Facebook page on such digital tagging technologies, and Mr. Gates once again has his fingers in at least 2 of the technologies in this article, like a Microsoft patent on a cryptocurrency that monitors your body activity and rewards you for good behavior. Yeah, I'm not making that up. Feel free to look up the article on our Facebook page called Sickness, Surveillance and Skepticism, and I'll also place a link in the description. If that's not good enough to convince you that the vaccine baron also has a very keen interest in monitoring and surveilling everyone on the planet, we have some more for you. In 2017 and 2018, Mr. Gates backed 2 different projects to blanket the Earth in video surveillance satellites. According to this article in The Independent about the 2017 project called Radiant Earth, these satellites will help in the planning and management of issues such as land tenure, global health, sustainable development, food security, and disaster response. ID 2020's partners include, amongst others, Microsoft, Gavi, the Rockefeller Foundation, who provided the seed funding, and the UN International Computing Center. For those who already have some understanding of Agenda 21 and global governance, that should be all you need to know about ID 2020. For those who are new to all this, you have a lot of catching up to do. Gavi is the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. It was founded by the World Bank, the World Health Organization, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, obviously, and Bill Gates calls the $10 billion investment his foundation has in Gavi and 2 other vaccine programs the best investment he has ever made. What is the relationship between ID 2020 and vaccines? In pilot programs, Gavi provide the vaccines. ID 2020's digital ID track the vaccination records of the participants, and it is quite clear to see from the narrative in the overt 19 world we now live in, that this record that is tracked by the digital ID will be used to give or deny you certain permissions, like flying, as we'll see. Let's just pause for a second with all the information we've just heard in overt 19 and have a look at what this very small circle of people and organizations are now telling us about our future.
Can you imagine a time where Americans carry certificates of immunity?
You know, that's possible. I mean, it's one of those things that we talk about when we want to make sure that we know who the vulnerable people are and not. This is something that's being discussed. I think it might actually have some merit under certain circumstances.
Eventually, what we'll have to have is certificates of who's a recovered person, who's a vaccinated person, because you don't want people moving around the world. So eventually there will be sort of this digital immunity proof that will help facilitate the global reopening up.
The ultimate solution to a virus that might keep coming back would be a vaccine. In fact, I was on the weekly conference call with the WHO-sponsored group of all the health leaders in the world who are dealing with this. And we all came to the agreement that we may have cycling with another season. We'll be much better prepared. We likely will have interventions. But the ultimate game changer in this will be a vaccine.
Even the issue of once you get the case numbers down, there's a lot of dialogue between our foundation experts and the government now, but what does opening up look like? Which activities like schools, have such benefit and can be done in a way that the risk of transmission is very low?
Yeah.
And which activities, like mass gatherings, may be, in a certain sense, more optional. And so until you're widely vaccinated, those may not come back at all.
We need to develop a vaccine. We need to produce it and to deploy it in every single corner of the world.
This is besides the fact that we've never been able to make a successful coronavirus vaccine, and that trying to make one has so far proved notoriously dangerous because of a well-known phenomenon of antibody-induced enhancement or vaccine-induced enhancement that could make the disease much, much worse than it otherwise would be. Some more interesting trivia on Mr.
I'm an expert on vaccines.
He was elected as a foreign academic to one of China's top educational institutions, the Chinese Academy of Engineering, in 2017. This is a lifelong honor that is expected to build up the institution,
Say no more.
promote international cooperation and exchanges, as well as improve CAE's status in the field of engineering. Gates also sponsored a paper in 2014 explaining to you that double-blind placebo studies can't be done with vaccines because the argument goes it is unethical to not give people a vaccine if one exists. It literally argues to minimize the use of double-blind placebo studies, which it admits is the gold standard for testing, and that as part of discussions around trial designs, investigators should consider different types of placebo interventions rather than using a true placebo control, an inert substance. It may be appropriate to use a vaccine against a disease that is not the focus of the trial. In other words, use another vaccine as a placebo, also known as the antithesis of a placebo. A placebo is anything that seems to be a real medical treatment but isn't. It could be a pill, a shot, or some other type of fake treatment. What all placebos have in common is that they do not contain any active substance meant to affect health. Either these people are telling you they are abandoning the gold standard for testing, or they are telling you that vaccines don't really do anything for health.